movement therapy. And so, as always, voice movement therapy is quite a spherical discipline, really. So, you know, there's no one linear way of approaching it or starting to explain it. I haven't been at all the workshops today, so I don't know, maybe people already did the sphere today. We'll find out maybe. And so it's an introduction. So I feel I should say a little bit about where it came from. Now, as you're here on a voice movement therapy conference, probably some of you know the beginnings of the work. I certainly know that the practitioners and the provisional practitioners here know the beginnings of the work, but it's such an amazing story. And the story is just over 100 years old, really, you know, and so that really matters, I think, you know, when you look back at, you know, what is the lineage, what's the ancestry, you know, what are the shoulders upon which we stand. So we stand and we sit here today in 2021, and the story began in the battlefields of Germany during World War I, the First European War, with a young German Jewish medic, Alfred Wolfson, who many of you have probably heard of. And I won't give you the big story, I'll just tell you very briefly. And so during the war, Alfred Wolfson encountered the sounds of human voices in ways he did not know the human voice could sound. Traumatized voices, voices of young men who had to encounter sights and experiences that really no human being should ever have to encounter, and yet which sadly are still occurring globally today. And during anyway, after the war, he suffered from shell shock, post-traumatic stress disorder. And the way that it played for him is he had oral hallucinations. So he heard in his head the voices of those men on the battlefield, you know, the young men fighting for their lives, depriving others of their lives, living in rat-infested trenches, you know, starving and hungry and cold and no comfort in sight. And after the war, even though he had left the battlefield had not left him. It was still inside him. And so those voices, the voices that he had heard carried on singing in his head, carried on wailing and yelling in his head. And it became a kind of life and death thing for him, you know, because he was not able to find rest. He wasn't able to find escape from those voices. And it was in desperation that he began investigating his own voice. He had gone to almost everybody he could think of to say, look, please help me. And psychiatric establishments, the early days of psychiatry, the learned peoples, you know, he was German and he had very strong cultural history. And so he had explored every resource he could think of until finally he arrived at the place and said, you know, there is nobody who can help me. I have to find my own cure. I have to find the thing that will help me. And he didn't know if he would be successful. Through a process of investigation over a number of years, he started exploring with his own voice the voices that he heard in his head. And of course, many of these voices were quite extreme. They weren't what you would normally categorize as beautiful. And in order to adequately express these voices and give them the life that they deserved, he had to also bring his own body into the expression. He couldn't just sit in his armchair or his office chair and go, ooh, I'm going to express my trauma, or I'm going to express my rage and my pain or my desperate grief or existential loss. He had to also find with his own body the movements and the contortions of his body, which would allow him to bring out those sounds and to hold and carry the weight that the sounds bore. So that's Wolfson. He is our granddaddy and our great-great-granddaddy and all the people in there. And so during World War II, he carried on singing. He carried on exploring his voice. He was writing to Carl Jung and saying, I believe I have found the vocal work which corresponds to the work which you are formulating. And certainly the voices that I have found, because not only did he find the terrified voices from the trenches, he also found many voices of beauty. And he had come to the realization that his voice, the human voice, not just his voice, the human voice could express every aspect of being human. So the beautiful, the dark, the shadows, the light, the young, the old, the male, the female, all the spaces in between. It was truly the voice which accompanied, it was truly the voice which represented any aspect of humanity, not only the personal story, but also what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. So everything which surrounds us, including, you know, the environments and nature. Anyway, during World War II, he was able, fortunately, to flee Nazi Germany. And he arrived in the United Kingdom. He was interned for a while in a prisoner of war camp, and then he was able to join the branch of the British Army, which allowed German soldiers to join, and he fought for Britain. And he carried on his voice work after the war. He carried on in the exploration, the meaning of the body, the meaning of the voice in the different places that are possible, the meaning of the psyche, And he would have his students and his clients, he would have them come, and for him, singing lessons, you know, he was making it up as he went along. Of course, as you know, everything has to begin somewhere and somebody has to make everything up, you know. So Wolfson was really making it up as he went along. And so he would have people come to his classes, and, you know, and they'd sit at the piano and he'd say, so tell me your dream. What did you dream last night? What happened? And then maybe halfway through, they'd have a cigarette. So they'd sit and they'd have a cigarette and they'd talk life and the meaning, or the meaning of the dream, or the meaning of the sound which just occurred. And he wasn't afraid to use the body and his body in relation to the person singing, to bring about the best or the most free sounds that they could find. So he died in 1962. His work was carried on by Roy Hart, who had been one of his students, and he took the work into the expanded vocal range in theatre. And then in the 1980s, a young British man called Paul Newham came along. And Paul Newham explored the theatre work of Roy Hart, and also said, you know, what has happened to the therapeutic element of this? You know, this work began in trauma and the therapeutic healing, if you like, exploration. And so why have we, you know, why have we moved away from that? So Paul sought to bring back the therapeutic container for the work, and he devoted himself, you know, studying the voice. He went to Europe searching for the roots. He went to the Jewish Museum in Amsterdam and spent time there. He went to the Roy Hart people. You may or may not know the book Therapeutic Voice Work. It's a very good book. It's came out in the late 1990s, 98, I think, 97, 98. And even though it's 24 years old, it's still unparalleled in what it writes. You'll have to excuse me, I'm really tired. My voice is now expressing its tiredness. That's exactly an example of what the human voice does. Doesn't matter that my mind goes, you know, just carry on talking, Christine. It's like my voice is saying, I'm really tired. Anne Brownell and I just finished last Friday teaching a month-long module of the voice movement therapy training. It was intensive. We did very long hours. We went very deep, and it's been a busy week ever since. And so here's my voice telling you. And that's one of the things that the voice does. It reveals who we are past what we want it to tell other people. It tells our story for us. So, and you will all have noticed that in your interactions in life, whether you're singers or therapists or people embarking on either, both, or the conjoined area of those for the first time. So I have lots of notes written everywhere around me. That's my process revealed to you. So voice movement therapy, it's really about paying attention to the voice and the body. And of course, the voice is in the body, you know, so the things that the body encounters and lives through in life also impact upon the voice. It's quite simple. The stories we live through impact upon the voice. The environment in which we are raised impacts upon the voice. Everything which surrounds us, the family, society, culture, education, everything impacts upon the voice and the things we are able and allowed to say. The things which are welcomed in our environment, the things which are welcomed in our home, the things which are welcomed in our culture, the things which are prohibited, repressed, the things which are prohibited without us having the conscious awareness of their prohibition. It's so multi-layered, so multi-layered. And so once you start working with the voice, then once you start working with the voice, you're also working with the body, of course, you know, and sometimes, you know, the body configures itself in certain ways to keep parts of ourselves silent for whatever reason. I just have adopted a posture now just as a way of demonstrating. And I already feel, you can't see it, but I can see it. It's like I just brought my right arm in front of me and I held it in a certain way. And I feel already the tension which starts to come up my arm and into my shoulder and affects my vocal cords. I feel a tightness in my throat. Often there is, you know, often, again, depending upon the story we're raised within, you know, people often become quite concave, adopt a concave self, you know, so literally the cave, curling in on oneself. That's often, you know, how do we protect our heart from the insults that it's had to endure? You know, if we make ourselves protective with our own body, then that is a way of doing that. It's ironic. Is it ironic? I don't know. It's irritating that in present day, much of our contemporary lives seems to require of us that we adopt this posture, which is not the protective one. It's like the poor one, you know, as we lean over our computers and seek to try and see into the eyes of somebody who's 12,000 miles away, as we seek to make sense, as we get our iPhone, where is it? As we get our iPhone and peek into it, and we all start going, whoa. And so we adopt this concave. Actually, I'm going to say more things, but we're just going to do a little exercise now to come out of the concave. I got this from, I'm just going to stand up. Stand up if you want. If you don't. I got this from a good friend of mine on Martha's Vineyard when I used to live there, Megan Grennan, and it's great. So you take your two glasses, and they can be full of beer, or they can be full of your green smoothie, or they can be full of your cups of tea, whatever you want. And what you're going to do is you're going to lift them up, and you're going to lift them up high, 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 and then you're going to empty them behind you. So you might want to change your drink this time. Might be tea or it might be beer. It is Friday evening after all. So, and you're going to lift your glasses up, lift them up, and you feel the weight of the liquid in there. Lift them up, lift them up. Oh, and then you're going to empty them behind you. Good, we'll do it another couple of times, another 2 times. So lifting up your glasses. You can let out a sigh if you wish. I can't hear, so I don't know. And the glasses. Lovely. And give your shoulders a little bit of a, oh, shake, shake, shake. Oh, take them back. Oh my gosh. Oh, take them forward. Oh. Let them tell their own story. Mine want to go forward and back in relationship to each other and not at the same time. And you see, that's one of the main things about voice movement therapy. So you might want to move the direction, come forward doing that movement. Because we're listening. So in theory, oh my gosh, that feels so good to me. Because in theory, you know, we're voicing out, but before we're voicing out, okay, I'm just going to stop for a moment. Before we're voicing out, we're also listening. We're listening in. We're listening to the inside of us. So we're listening. It's a way, it's a discipline which comes, it's about bringing us home to ourselves. So as you've probably already heard today, you know, we don't just go, make any sound. Well, we do. but we might just start with just make any sound. But eventually the sound connects in. The sound starts to have meaning. So we make a sound and the sound connects us to ourselves. And it's a really interesting thing. You obviously all find voice somewhat interesting because you're here. But the voice is a really interesting thing, you know, because we're a human being and we've got all this stuff going on. We've got all these bones and muscles and blood vessels and all these organs and all these histories and all these attitudes and shoulds and interpretations. We've got all these images. James Hillman said that there is nothing in life that is not imagistic, not poetic. You know, we have all this stuff going on, and yet there's very, very few things in life which have the relationship with the inside and the outside of us. I'm especially preoccupied with teeth at the moment. Some of you might be aware of that, you know, but I'm very aware that, you know, there are parts of the teeth, you know, half the teeth are in the face and the other half are out, they're seen, you know, so half in, half out. Fingernails, I guess they're a little bit in. Your skin, the skin, amazing, you know, the skin is this on the outside. And of course, there's all sorts of things with the skin. And, you know, when we're babies, then the baby doesn't hear the song of the primary caregiver. It doesn't hear soothing sounds as separate from touch. But on the inside, the skin's very different. So the skin is a boundary. The skin is like it's a two-way thing. inside and outside. Voice also, ha ha, ha ha. Voice also inside and outside. We bring the voice from the inside of us to the outside. And not only that, you know, I believe that everybody talks to themselves. And I know that most certainly everybody self-talks inside there. Of course we do. And so often the voices that we have going on inside the self are not the voices which come out. But the voice which does come out of our mouth doesn't exist until the moment that it does come out of the mouth, because the voice is formed by air passing across the vocal folds and held within the resonating chambers of the body, the lungs, the face, depending whatever's going on. So it's only actually in the moment that the voice arrives out into the world that it exists. It doesn't exist before that. Of course we can hear it. I don't know if any of you have had the expression of hearing the song that you would like to sing inside you and then singing it and it coming out as something so completely different from what you wanted to hear. I don't know. You're like, I didn't know it was going to sound like that. That's not what I wanted. It's even worse if you've done it on the stage, I tell you. Anyway, I hope you never have, or you never will. So, and one of the things about voice is that my hands just want to move with the sensation of it. You know, it can express so many different things about us. It can represent us, sometimes adequately, sometimes inadequately. If we're lucky, we can state our no clearly so that it can be heard by others. If we're lucky, we can say, I love you and mean it. If we're lucky, we can be heard and understood by others. But for a lot of people, finding voices which they feel represents them, it's really hard. You know, a lot of people feel that they have to don a mask, you know, when they're very young, and that's what they wear. That's what they wear. And then they feel the emptiness of not being seen or heard or recognized or mirrored, because the mask was put on too soon. The mask of acceptance, the mask of being able to survive or endure within the environment in which they were born. So there are numbers of things that I want to do. And one of the things that was very clear to me when I wrote my thesis after taking my training, and I felt like I'd been in preparation for my training in voice movement therapy for years by the time I came to it. And at the end of it, I wrote my thesis. And what I concluded my thesis with was, and now do you know your story? And now do you know your story? And that's what, to me, encapsulated this work. Like, how can we know our stories? How can we live with our stories? How can we make something different with and from our stories? How can we endure, not only endure, but find a lessening, a loosening of the stories which bind us? And you know, we see in the world how many tragic, terrible stories that people have to live. It's just not fair. It's really not fair. You know, how the human psyche can endure so much on and on, and the year 2021, and we still haven't found the ways to do things differently. Incredible, really. Incredible. And so what do we do with that which ails us? In voice movement therapy, we express, we shape, we make, we do. So we give expression to the stories which are inside of us. And sometimes we may not have conscious knowledge of what those stories are. Sometimes we may think, oh, I want to work on that. We make a sound and something new occurs. Something new presents itself from the unconscious, makes itself known. You know, the voice is prone to doing unexpected things. Of course, we have the songs which we know and we have known for decades and which we know go like this. But then another day you might make a sound and then the voice will just go like this, and it will take you into worlds you have never explored before, worlds that are uncharted for you. And one of the ways that we do this is through the vocal components. I'm sure you've heard about them through the rest of the day. So, and every single human voice uses the same vocal components, but in different ways. There's like 10 named vocal components. And how many billions of people are there alive? I don't know. But every single voice uses them in different ways, which then makes your voice yours, your identity, yourself, you know, and your story written within it. So, but the vocal components can be a way of enabling people to find new parts of their voices, parts that they may not have thought that they wanted to explore. Mm-hmm. And I also, you know, I think it's in the nature of being human that we have the inexplicable sadnesses and longings and appetites and fears. Of course, some of them are related to our experiences, but others, you know, we have, as you know, we have created through centuries because we have things which we need to express. You know, every single human being has artistic impulses which they need to express. And every single human being, and I've met nearly all of them, or I've met a good few of them anyway, every single human being that has a voice is a songwriter and a composer and can make art with their voice. And that's true, and I will duel anybody who challenges that. It's absolutely true. We are all born artists. And if you go back to the very earliest of days, if babies are lucky, they have somebody who engages with them in song. And so they get to hear, you know, they get to hear their sounds replicated. They get to engage in a backwards and forwards. But, you know, the next time you come across a baby, whether it's somebody, you know, somebody's baby, you know, or in a stroller in the street, tune in and listen, you know, because they're so often there being the avant-garde jazz musicians that most of them are, you know, like they're writing things that John Cage could only dream of, basically. So yes, anyway, voice is for everybody, and everybody can sing. Everybody can sing, really. I just see a message that says bingo. I've no idea why, but bingo, go to bingo. Yes. So, and one of the things that we do, because the vocal, I want to do some sounding stuff with you as well, but there's also, I discover I have lots of things I want to say. There's also one of the things that the who we are has constellated around the things that we can say. And so when we start to use our voice differently by virtue of the vocal components, which Chris, I think, has put up in the chat, then one of the things is that we do find new places. And because we are finding places which might not exist in our usual articulated self, in our hello, how are you? Yes, I'm all right. How are you? Etc. Then often we go into the place past languages, and so images arrive. Not always, not always. If you don't get images, that's fine. And for some people, or new sensations, it's really quite extraordinary. And those images can be worked with, they can be sounded, or they can be drawn, or you can write around what the images are. I also want to leave a few minutes at the end for questions. So can somebody give me a time on that, maybe, Chris? Is it you? Like, give me 5 minutes or
Okay. Yeah, no
7
problem.
minutes, something at the end.
7:33 now, so.
Okay, great. So one of the things that I've really been thinking about, and I was looking back through some of the things I was writing, and I was like, oh, more than a year ago I was writing this, and because I had the idea to do this for this, and I was like, oh, look at that, that's more than a year ago. I was writing in Greece. So I've really been thinking about, voice as the container of the self. In voice movement therapy, we say song is the container. We say song and voice, it's the vehicle, it's the expression, it's the container. And we also contain voice. So the voice is both in and out. We contain voice and it's our container. So I want to I keep looking at I want to just invite you to, if it's comfortable for you, maybe place your feet upon the floor, or I'm gonna ask you possibly to, if it's, only do things which are comfortable for you. I'm going to offer some suggestions, take what you like and whatever. So you might want to feel into the space of your neck, your throat. And I'm going to ask you to take your imagination to your throat. Just travel down into your throat. And on the way, you're going to breathe into your mouth. Breathe in through your mouth and your nose. Open mouth's good. And I want you to imagine that the breath comes into your mouth, into the back of your mouth and into your throat. And that you just sit there and you allow this movement, this gentle movement of expansion, of possibly light, if that helps. And then allow the breath to start to come into just under your shoulders, along your collarbone, across the top of your chest. You might want to take your hands and stroke this here. As if you're just gently opening up. You're touching, you're coming into contact with your body. If you can also imagine the back of that part of the body as well. So imagine that that also starts to breathe. So the top of your lungs, your shoulders. And then let the breath come down lower into your lungs. And feel the expansion. Let the imagination start to expand the lungs. And they can expand front and back. They can expand to the side. You can imagine them as some semi-spherical thing. And they can start to float a little. The chest may rise and fall. And coming down to your lower lungs. And letting the breath start to fill here. Front and back. Sideways. There's soft parts of the body. There's hard parts of the body. Let the soft parts fill with air. Fill with inspiration. And then come into the belly. And we're looking for the soft flow of breath. You know, you're just allowing in what it's okay for you to allow in this moment. Like a summer breeze. As if the Isley Brothers were singing Summer Breeze to you, and your body responds, and the summer breeze starts to inspire you from the inside. And the back may also swell as the belly rises. So take your attention also to the pelvic area, to the seated part, what you're sitting on. And let that also breathe. Let that be breathed and let it breathe. And we're going to give, in common parlance, a shout out to the legs and the feet now. So you can just bounce them up and down to make sure you know that they're there. Let them shake them a little bit. I'm sat down and I'm shaking them and it feels pretty good. And then I'd like you to come and I'm going to ask you to imagine that in your belly and pelvic area, that there is a sphere of sound, that you let the breath start to become a sound. It can be any sound you wish. It can be a sigh. It can be a note. It can be any pitch, high or low. Any vowel. If you're lucky like me to have a nice big round belly, it's easier to imagine filling that with light. You fill your belly in whatever way works for you, and with the luckiness that you have to have it. Imagine it's a sphere of sound and light. And then on top of that, if you could imagine the lower part of your lungs and the mid part of your belly, from your belly button up, as if there's almost another sphere of sound there. Front and back, so it's a sphere of sound inside you. And then the top of your lungs, your chest, the back, another sphere of sound here. As it expands, it becomes round with sound. And a globe of light in your throat, in all the areas where your voice is held, is contained, the vocal folds. It's a globe of light in your throat. And take the globe of sound and light into your mouth and into your head, and let that sing, let that be lit up, let that sound and sing. And as you let the sound come through your mouth, let the sound pour from your mouth, and let the sound start to bring itself spherically around you. So the sound becomes something, a sphere within which you can hold and move and undulate your spine and your voice within. And if you slowly start to come back to yourself, you may want to give yourself a moment to check in, to see if you can see the inside of yourself through sound, to see if you were reminded of anything, if any images arose for you, if any sensations or feelings arose. It's a reflection in and out. Okay. Okay. This is like the fast train through voice movement therapy, the Midnight Express through voice movement therapy. So, hello again. Of course, this is the antithesis of how we usually work, where we see people's heads and the tops of their bodies and we don't hear their voices or see bodies. It's, you know, the exact opposite. I know it is for many in the world, but it's just still amazing. So I guess if people have questions or something they would like to say, then now might be a good time whilst we're still here. I'm still here.
So, Christine, William here.
Hello.
Hi. Can you speak to the movement in voice movement therapy and also are you these days working on the body directly?
Can I? Yes. So, you may have missed that part earlier, William, because I said that the voice, as it's in the body, is directly impacted by all the things which happen to the body. And so one of the things that we do in voice movement therapy, one of the many things we do, is we also have massage and compression, massage manipulation and compression, whereby we use particular skills related to the voice and VMT, particular to VMT, in order to release some of the muscular holding which can keep the voice in place. So the things which keep us stuck in our lives are, as I said, multifaceted and many. So it could be, for some people, it will be muscular. For some people, it will be psychological. For some people, it will be emotional. For some people, it will be confidence. For some people, it will be conditioning. You know, there's many, many different things. So we use the body to allow the expression of different things. And we have what I was inviting there was the movement, the free movement within a sphericalness, within which allows a fluidity, a flowing to the body, which then also can allow the voice to flow. So we're not saying, okay, stand upright and get it right, sing it properly. It's like, what happens? So we're losing the kind of conditioning which says you've got to get it right. Because of course, if the body's in free movement and it's going backwards and forwards spherically, then the control that it can exercise upon the voice is different. It has to let go. So it has to let go physically and psychologically. I hope that is sufficient of an answer for this moment. I know there was a second part to the question. I don't remember what it was at the moment.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Christine, I'd love to hear that second question around the movement aspect of voice movement therapy. Actually, movement.
Okay. So let me just answer this. So somebody says, is this self-massage or a VMT practitioner doing it to you? Now that's both. That can be both. So it depends upon people's relationship with touch. It depends upon what has happened. It depends upon many different things. So it could be, there are all sorts of things that we say here, you can do this one yourself. And there are also many other things, we will say, can I come in and make an adjustment here? Can I help to loosen these muscles here? And, the touch can be from the very lightest of touch, again, depending upon what people are, what people, what's okay for people, or it can be a really deep touch, which really goes in deep and helps to change it at a deep level. I don't mean at a deep level, helps change it in that way. The lightest of touch can also help to change things at a deep level. It all depends upon, there's any of you who do massage, there's no one way of approaching somebody else's body. It all has to be worked out in the space in between, like what is okay and what do you want, because it's all about what do you want, what would you feel beneficial to you. It's not, oh, well, I think that you need this and so I'm going to do this. It's not that. It's like, would this be of use to you? So how am I on time, Chris McLean?
You're right about bang on time. It's
Okay.
7:57.
Okay. Okay. Does that mean that we finish then?
I think it does. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming out tonight, and nice to see you wherever you are in the world. Where are you? No. And I hope you have a lovely rest of the evening. I'm going to stay for Marley's exploration now, and and hopefully, who knows what will happen in the days and years to come. Hopefully, we will all meet somewhere along the way. That would be lovely. All right. Good night, everybody. Cheers. Bye. Bye.